despite the chaos, the next day, Iraqis were out in the streets protesting.
19 killed and 100 injured in Najaf.
And what they were demanding at this time was elections, the right to actually have a say in what the post-Saddam era would look like. Now, in the early days of the occupation, the protests were peaceful, but as time went on, and the protests didn't have an effect, more and more Iraqis joined the armed resistance.
The violence spun out of control. As in South America 3 decades earlier, bodies were often dumped by the roadside as a warning to others. These were Iraq's disappeared. Extremely aggressive measures were needed to suppress the opposition. The first 3.5 years of the occupation, 61,500 Iraqis were captured. By spring 2007, 19,000 remained in custody. In prison, they were interrogated using techniques that could be traced to those devised by the CIA from Ewan Cameron's experiments in the 50s. According to the Red Cross, US military officials admitted that between 70 and 90% of arrests in Iraq were mistakes. The chaos in Iraq seems like a defeat for shock therapy. But in Iraq, disaster capitalism moved on. Now the disaster itself provided the opportunity for profit. US military spending has almost doubled since 2001, nearing $700 billion per year. As long ago as 1961, President Eisenhower, not a noted liberal, warned of the danger of a too powerful military.
Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
The war in Iraq is the most privatized war in modern history. The Green Zone in Baghdad is an extreme version of what is happening around the world. A privatized, secure world protected from the chaos outside. In 1991, in the First Gulf War, for every 100 soldiers, there was one military contractor. In 2003, at the beginning of the war in Iraq, for every 100 soldiers, there were 10 contractors. By 2006, for every 100 soldiers, there were 33 contractors. A year later, for every 100 soldiers, there were 70 contractors. By July 2007, there were more contractors than soldiers in Iraq. This was going beyond what even Milton Friedman had dared to hope.
The only things I would not denationalize are the armed forces, the courts, and some of your roads and highways.
One of the most high-profile contractors was Blackwater USA. During the April 2004 uprising in Najaf, Blackwater assumed command over US Marines. Dozens of Iraqis were killed during the operation. The US had indemnified the private contractors against any Iraqi laws, so they were operating in a law-free bubble, a little like Guantanamo.
I asked your Secretary of Defense a couple months ago what law governs their actions. Mr.
I was going to ask him. Go ahead. Help.
Well, I was hoping.
Just as Cameron's shock therapy left his patients confused and broken, so the multiple shocks inflicted on Iraq reduced the country to a lawless, violent, sectarian mess. By the time of Saddam Hussein's execution in 2006, 1,000 Iraqis were being killed each week. By April 2007, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees estimated 4 million people had had to leave their homes. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis had died.
I think the historians will write very clearly that we did a great and noble thing here.
ضد الإرهاب الأمريكي، لأن الأمريكان يقتلون النساء ويعتقلون النساء ويقتلون الأطفال ويهينون الشيوخ ويقتلون الشباب. أمريكا بحقها هي الإرهاب.
When Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in August 2005, the world was shocked to witness a sort of disaster apartheid. The economically secure drove out of town, while tens of thousands of the vulnerable were stranded with little or no help from the state.
I went to New Orleans while the city was still underwater, and what I saw was that what I had witnessed in Iraq was repeating, not in the aftermath of a war, but in the aftermath of a tremendous natural disaster.
Milton Friedman died in 2006. His very last piece of public policy recommendation was an op-ed he wrote for the Wall Street Journal 3 months after Katrina. He said, most New Orleans schools are in ruins, as are the homes of children who have attended them. The children are now scattered all over the country. This is a tragedy. It is also an opportunity to radically reform the education system. He was advocating the wholesale privatization of the school system of this city. It was his sort of swan song. I've witnessed a similar process in Sri Lanka in the aftermath of the 2004 tsunami. People who lived on the beaches for generations were prevented from returning so that the land could be privatized and sold off to luxury hotels. And this is exactly what I mean by the shock doctrine. The systematic raiding of the public sphere in the aftermath of a disaster. When people are too focused on the emergency, on their daily concerns, to protect their interests.
Maybe the first act of resistance is to refuse to allow our collective memory to be wiped. In 2008, Noami Klein visited Villa Grimaldi with Isabel Morel, the widow of Orlando Letelier. Villa Grimaldi is a memorial to the cruelty of the Pinochet regime and to its eventual defeat.
Villa Grimaldi fue el principal centro de tortura mientras se buscaba implementar la política de shock económico. Esta es la que tú señalas en el libro como las casas de uno por uno donde estaban los detenidos en Villa Grimaldi.
It's not that I loved Pinochet, but I think that he was our teacher in many things. We learned about evil.
In 1998, Pinochet was arrested while he was in London. His old ally, Margaret Thatcher, stood by his side.
I know how much we owe to you